Welcome to Wheels, Deals, and Meals, where we talk all things good food, good business, and good cars. And now, here is your host, Arnold Gasita, founder and CEO of Petra Automotive Products. Let's roll.
Well, we got a great show for you today. Before we start, though, let me remind everybody, please subscribe, comment, share, like, all that fun stuff that you do in social media or YouTube. Please do that. On today's show, I have Jacob Tilzer. I've had the pleasure of meeting him not too long ago. We both have a lot of things in common. We're both boxers, as an example. No, I'm just kidding. He's a boxer, I'm not. As you can tell, it's like if somebody invites me to speak and I go, I'm here to talk to you about exercising.
Yeah.
And they're looking at you like, maybe not. When we talk about food, it's like, okay, I got you. Anyway, hey, thanks for being on the show.
No, appreciate you having me.
Thanks,
Super excited to be here.
So let's start with the easy questions. Favorite all-time car? What is the car that Jacob wants in the Jacob Museum?
So this could be a two-pronged question for me because I had that goal of, hey, I want to get to this car, and then I got that car. So then I had to reset it. But originally it was the McLaren 720S.
Okay.
So it's a step up from the 570. It's
Right.
a step down from the 765, which is a little bit too
It's a nice car, though.
loud for me. The 720S still, it's up there, but it's in the middle of, it's not the entry level, and it's not the
highest.
hey, look at me, you know. But now I would probably say the 918.
Really?
Yeah, 918.
All right.
GT.
What's your favorite food? This is going to be a fun one.
Yeah. I'm a Mexican food.
Mexican food?
Yeah.
What was the thing that you told me the first time we met that you eat lean and mean? What was it? Lean and mean?
Lean and clean.
Lean and clean.
Yeah.
So first time we met, of course, I love food, as you guys know. And he goes, oh, I eat lean and mean. Lean and green.
Lean and clean.
Lean and clean, which
You can't even get it off your tongue.
I can't even say it. I can't even say lean and clean. It doesn't even roll off my tongue, you know? So anyway, it's good. The next 2 days I'm going to eat healthy thanks to you, so good job.
Yeah.
All right, of all the places you've traveled, what's your favorite?
I have not done a ton of traveling. I've been very focused on the company the last 12, 13 years, and that takes a lot of weekends. We'll do some inter-country stuff. We go to Utah, occasionally California. But recently, with my YPO group, we went to Cuba, and that was definitely the most interesting place that I've been so far in the traveling that I've done.
What's your bucket list place to go?
I have not given that one a ton of thought, but this might be a little bit left field, but I'd like to go see the pyramids just to try to wrap my head around how that came to be, and
Yes,
with no modernized tools that we have now.
Listen, and you go to places like that, and you go, they can't build a house straight.
Right.
But they built a pyramid back then with no tools.
You can't even fit a credit card in between.
I think pride is a
placement.
lot of it, though. I think, historians will probably tell you something else, but I think people had so much pride in we're going to get this done, and it's going to be perfect.
Yeah.
And it's going to last forever. Where now it's like, slapping some stuff together and good luck.
It amazes me doing some of that research, but then just the inner workings of the inside of the pyramids and how these places were sealed time capsules for thousands and thousands of years, and how well preserved either the physical items were in there or even the mummification process.
And they thought that out.
Yeah.
Right? It wasn't like, it happened that way. It was thought out. And even places that have seen war, but like when you go to Greece or Italy or Rome, the things that are still there that have lasted or they uncovered and is still there.
Yeah.
Like, there's a slim chance our homes will be around 1,000 years from now.
Yeah.
A slim chance. You know what I mean?
But they would not be unless they were made out of indestructible marble or some building material that can
the
weather.
foundation. I mean, they were so good at what they did. I remember going to Notre Dame and hearing the story about how they built that in France. And it's like, these people were amazing. Like the people that started it never saw it end, right? It's just amazing, So that's a good reason to go travel, is to see the wonders of the world, which obviously the pyramids are.
Yeah.
Is to go see that. All right. So on your story, I'm going to start a little bit different. So I always start out by asking people, where you from? Where were you born? How did you work your way up to become the successful guy that you are?
Sure.
In yours, I'm going to start backwards.
Okay.
Okay. So you recently sold a company.
Yes.
And that company was what?
It was inside the parent company. There were 3 different companies, but the core business of that company was collision repair. So if you got into an accident, we fixed your car, typically.
And how many stores did you have?
We had, at the time of selling, we had 48 locations for the collision repair business. The calibration and mechanical business, we had 10 locations. We had just opened the 10th location, and then we were servicing auto glass in 2 states.
So 58 store tops?
We had one building that was also still under going through the construction phases, and then a brownfield that we had just signed on that we were just going to begin to remodel. So,
all right. Can you say what it was sold for, or you don't want to?
It was at a 9-figure amount. So.
Yeah. All right, so 9-figure amount.
Yeah.
And you're how old?
35 now.
35.
Yeah.
And you sold it when you were how old?
35. So,
Okay. So
I've sold twice now to private equity.
Yeah.
First time was 8 figures back in 2021, and then this time was a 9-figure exit.
So 9-figure exit
Yeah.
a few months ago at the age of 35.
Yes.
Okay. I want to start there because now I want to start in the beginning.
Okay.
Okay. So where were you born?
Riverside, San Bernardino, California.
Okay. Tell us what happened to your life.
I was born into a family of unfit parents. At the age of 6 months, I was taken away by Child Protective Services on the side of a freeway.
6 months on the side of a freeway.
Yep. My mother was walking down the side of the freeway in Riverside, middle of the day, busy traffic. Middle of the summer, too, so I was told it was about 100 degrees. What I had actually read in some paperwork I found was about 100 degrees, so I had entered the foster care system after that day.
So you entered the foster care system at age 6 months.
Correct.
What is that journey of entering the foster care program? Like, at 6 months, did you go to a home? Did you go to a facility?
Yeah, so the initial phase of foster care, they bring you to a safe place. So Child Protective Services, they've since changed the name, but it was CPS back then. They initially bring you to what would be their intake triage center, and they're assessing you for physical harm, trying to see what mental capacity you currently have, what you've been exposed to. So there's a triage phase of, as I used to tell people, they sit you in a room to see if you can put the triangle shape inside the triangle and the circle shape inside the circle. And you got psychologists taking notes and people from the state, also making notes. So it's on the back end, it operates like a business. So yeah, that was the initial phase of it. And then there's foster parents who are either active foster parents. There's really only 2 kinds. So you either have an active home where you've got a certain number of beds and you're circulating those beds, or you're looking to maybe just adopt one child for your family. And that's typically a longer wait list because there's a constant need of children being taken from their homes needing safe placement. So the home that I grew up in, our parents there were respite foster parents, so it was immediate recovery for traumatic situations.
Were you officially adopted, or you just had foster care?
I was. So 5 of us in the house were officially adopted, and 5 of the beds always rotated. So through my childhood, a couple hundred kids had come and gone from the home between my earliest memories and up to 12 years old.
So you were adopted early on. You go into a home. They adopt 5 kids.
Yes.
But then another 5 in the same home are rotation.
Yeah.
So you see kids come and go, and you saw about 100 kids come in and out.
That's correct. you hear of adoption and you would think that's like the end goal for the system. So you would think that's the prize, or we won, or hey, somebody's accepted us. For us in the home, it was really more longer term placement. Because if you take the time from when we were adopted to the time I left the home, it was only a 9-year period. So, and then a lot of the other kids.
So how old were you when you adopted?
I was like 3 years old.
So before that, you're just in the system.
Just in the system. And what that is in the initial placement is you'll have a social worker who, depending on the type of situation, comes and checks on you daily at the home for an hour or 2 hours. Interviews, hey, how are they doing? What incidents happened? To remove your parental rights, something went drastically wrong. And for the state-funded programs, there's a lot of paperwork, and there's a big process around it. So it just, yes, not that I can remember a ton of that early time. I did get to see what it was through all the other kids, as I was always the oldest one in the home, and we had everything from newborns up to people that were my age, kids that were my age.
So in the system up till 3 years old,
Yep.
3 years old, you get adopted by a home that has another 5 beds in rotation.
There was 10 of us in that home.
10 of you, but 5 were adopted.
Correct.
And then 5 are rotating.
Yep.
And you're there with them for 9 years?
Yes.
So you were 12.
Yep.
What happens at 12?
At 12, I'll back up a little bit too. These foster parents also had 5 biological kids.
Wow.
So it was a very large amount of people, especially, for holidays and things like that. It's just a madhouse. But at 12, our foster father, adoptive father, he ended up passing away from a heart attack. So it was me and the kids in the home, and a sister came knocking on my door. Hey, something's wrong with him. I went downstairs. He's hunched over the table. He was having a heart attack. Ambulance came in, picked him up, took him out, and to the hospital he went. And they leave 10 of us in the house with like the front door open. It was the freakiest situation because none of us were. I mean, I was 12, so you're in a phase where you can watch your brothers and sisters, but came in, grabbed him. I mean, they literally left the door open and they were gone. So from that point, the home, I would say, fell apart. They were older parents, so at the time he had his heart attack, he was 68, 69, and I was 12. So it's tough to run. Foster kids can be challenging, and that's a lot for especially older parents to be dealing with on a daily basis. So the home fell apart. My adoptive mother, she had stopped fostering. I think it was state imposed. It was like, hey, 10 kids can't be nurtured by one single parent in their 60s. So, that was.
So what do you do at that point? When you're 12, are you leaving? Are you staying with them?
Yeah, so my path was interesting. Seeing all the things that I had seen those years and kind of morphing through life without a mentor, without somebody to
really help you
direct. While we were adopted, we were never nurtured. We were never taught about emotions or feelings or right from wrong. It was just kind of chaos.
You had a roof and a bed.
Here you go. There's food in the fridge. Figure it out.
That's it. Okay.
So, I was trying to figure myself out, and I just wanted out of the home. The other kids in the home, we all come from very traumatic situations, so we've all got our own quirks and issues, and I would say I had started to build up some resentment, because I don't know that when you view it like a business that, kids should be nurtured and raised and loved and, not experiencing any of those things. As I started to grow up and experience my own emotions, the first one that I developed was anger. Really confused, like, I did the woe is me for a little while, but just not knowing, till I pulled it together one day and just said figure it out. But I ended up running away and I left the home.
Yeah, well, nobody's helping you with those emotions, right? So
Right.
and then you're hitting the teenage years, right?
Yeah.
So you're just
13-year-old, no mentor, no father.
experiencing all these kind of feelings and emotions, and
Yeah,
and so at 12 or 13 you run away.
I did.
Okay, what happens next?
Well, you have to figure out how to survive. So
Like, where do you run to?
well, for me, the first place I knew to go was the park. So right down our street, there was a skate park, and the first night I slept in the skate park. And then through time,
Did anybody come looking for you?
no. And that was what led to more resentment, because I had a mother, I suppose, that it was like a mutual business understanding. I'm not coming home, and as long as I show up to school, I'll stay off of the system's radar, and you'll get your money, and I'm just not going to come back to the abuse. Yeah.
It is, we see more, and now that we are involved with Petra Cares, which you are involved in, by the way, thank you for being part of our advisory council. You're a great asset for us and for the kids especially. Nobody on any of our boards can say, I've been there, I've done that, but you. And that is powerful, right? More powerful than anything else. But one of the things that we don't realize, just because I think most people live in their bubble, is how it's a business.
Yeah.
It's a check.
Yep.
You're going to hold these bodies, and you're going to get a check, and some caseworker will check up every once in a while. And that's where there's no emotion, and there's no direction, and there's no mentoring, and there's no true unconditional love.
Yeah.
Holding a kid, hugging a kid, loving a kid. We ask our kids at Petra Cares, what do you want in life? And overwhelmingly, the majority say a family.
Yeah.
Not money.
Yeah.
A family. Xbox is up there like top 3, but
Yeah.
they want a family. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
All right, so you go to the park, nobody's looking for you. What's next? I mean, what happens?
So I had godparents that I was also supposed to at some point go with. They had owned a restaurant, so this was my first real introduction to business. So I had couch surfed. I stayed in the skate park the first night. Still remember the bugs crawling on me. It was like one of the memories like you never forget.
I bet.
And then I had done this thing where I had broken into homes that were for sale. I didn't damage anything. Just popped a lock. Was able to sleep on carpet. And if anybody ever saw me going in, I'd switch to a new house. So I did that for about 3 months. In that 3 months, I was allowed to start bussing tables at an Italian restaurant, and people would tip me because I was so young. Hey, here's $20. Hey, here's $50. And that was my first time of just learning that if you just work, people will pay you for good service. So hospitality restaurant was my first introduction. Yeah. So I get 3 months of bussing tables, and I started putting some money away as a 13-year-old.
Yeah.
I had convinced an 18-year-old, Billy Gregory, never forget his name. It was my first business deal. I said, hey, I can't get a hotel, but I've got cash. If I pay you a little bit extra, will you put this hotel in your name? So I got a place to sleep, and that ended up starting, this crazy path. So it was homeless.
So you are 13 working at this restaurant.
Yep.
And paying somebody to book a hotel for you.
Yes.
I don't even know what to say. That's crazy.
Yeah, it was a baseline in the I-10, the Red Roof Inn. I went from the skate park to the homes that were for sale to the Red Roof Inn, and then I met another kid, Adam Johnson, and his father had passed away. His mother had gotten him an apartment, but he wasn't doing very good. He wasn't working his job. He couldn't pay the bills, so I was working and her and I made a deal. She says, hey, if you'll cover half the rent, like, you can have one of the bedrooms. Like, I couldn't be on a lease. I wasn't 18.
Yeah.
So I did that until then I turned 18 and got my own place.
In the streets to a certain point. I mean, I know you
Yeah.
worked your way to have a little bit of money and have a room in a house and a hotel, but you're really hustling every day
Yeah.
to get that tip and that money to pay for your room and board.
Yep.
Not even food. I mean,
Yeah.
you're paying for your food, but
I wanted some cushion too, so I was paying for like 2 weeks for the room at a time because I didn't want to. You wanted to give myself
show up and go, hey, you're out of here. Yeah, because you don't want to do the park bench again.
Yeah, so it was definitely scrapping my way just to find the necessities.
So, are you going to school at this time?
I was.
And so you're going to school, you're working, and basically supporting yourself.
It was. People told me when I write the book, it's going to be the best first few chapters. I don't know how much I
said.
can.
I think so. I think you start with how we did.
Yeah.
Start with the last thing
Yeah.
you did, and then go back and start how, because people need to hear. This is my successful side,
Yeah.
right? Because that captures people.
Yeah.
But then let me tell you how I got here.
Yeah.
Because people will not. I think people will struggle because we all live in our bubble to put these pieces together.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Okay, so you're going through school, working, paying for your room and board. Did you graduate from high school?
I did not. I had gotten into trouble. So if you end up out on the streets, no mentor, no guide, and you're just looking for some form of love and affection, you'll find it, but it's not from the right people. So there was about a year phase in my life when I was 16 that I just was not the best kid. You know, I wasn't going overboard, but I had gotten myself into some trouble. It landed up in juvenile detention center. And the phase of that was the most helpless feeling. I always wanted to be doing something to feel somewhat productive. Being locked in a cell for a couple months, staring at a concrete wall, and only being able to read books. I was not into personal development books at the time. I think I read like Harry Potter or something like that. And
Yeah.
I'm just
So
those
to
aren't
entertain your mind.
yeah, but those aren't even those aren't even books that I get passionate about. So. It was a very helpless feeling. Time goes on. I had written him a letter, completing probation. The charges got stepped down to very minor charges, and it was just looked like just kid that got in a little bit of trouble. But I had asked him, hey, here's what I've done. You've never seen me again. I've never been in trouble since that day. I've held up my end of the deal. Can I get can I get this charge thrown out, set aside, expunged? So I ended up having to go back to them to ask for that, and they checked out my background, saw that I honored my deal, and set it aside, and now it's actually off my record.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
And good for the judge. I know that not everybody probably can get that chance, but good for the judge to risk and say, look, let's give it a shot.
Yeah.
Let's see what happens. And I know he was busy and had 40 cases, but not all judges would have done that. But good for him.
There were a bunch of caveats that came with it, and I just checked all those boxes and got off.
So what was your job at that point? What did you go do?
After I would leave vocational school, I got a job initially at a machine shop, learning about inventory and parts. The company that I was working for, they sold big CNC machines, but I ended up in the service department where they stocked all the pieces and the consumables for the CNC machines, and very boring job, inventory and
how
it was daily counting of inventory.
And how old were you this time?
I was 17.
17?
Yeah, 17.
What taught you math, right?
Math was one of the things I always loved in school. So
Okay.
I was always into the equations. It taught me inventory, right? Checking something in, checking something out, counting it every single month, truing it up. So ironically, I end up in a heavy inventory, high transaction volume business and background. But yeah, it more than anything taught me inventory and basic debits and credits of a portion of accounting. And then I would leave there and then actually delivered pizzas. So I would go to school till about 9:30 to 10:30. I would drive to the vocational school. The vocational school, I would stay there until I think we would get out maybe around 2. So then 2:30 to 5:30 or 6, I'd work at the machine shop, and then I'd have to drive all the way across town, and I started delivering pizzas. And I did that till probably 11, 12 at night. And
So how many hours did you work all day?
it was probably
14, 16?
Yeah.
So machine shop, inventory, and delivery guy.
Yeah.
Did you eat a lot of pizza?
Health's been one of my bigger things.
Even then?
I was always into sports. So I wrestled when I was young too. So even wrestling, you've got to cut weight and you've got to maintain lower weight so you can weigh in for matches. And then that continued on into boxing.
So you're doing this. What happens next? Is it the boxing or the boxing that already happened?
So, boxing I ended up in right before I ended up going to juvenile detention center. So I was right around 16, and I'll just tell a little bit of funny story. I was always a rough and tough kid. I'd been in a lot of fights, but I'd been standing out front of my house, just arguing with a couple people, and kid comes running from behind and punches me. Didn't go down, and then I ended up kicking his butt. But I remembered thinking, how did I not see or feel him coming? Obviously from back here, so I just said, you know what? I want to make sure that if this happens
senses.
again, my reflex twitches are very high. So I ended up walking myself into a boxing gym, and yeah, that was the start of my.
So it's such a different world for me, right? So you go in, you just walk into a gym at 16 years old and say, hey, I want to learn boxing.
Yep.
And the guy says, yeah, sure.
Yep. He put a headgear on me. He put me in with one of his pros. The dude busted me wide open. I just blood everywhere, and I was like, hey, I kind of like this.
Yeah, that's what I would say.
So that led to from 16 last time. So I joined the amateur program, and I fought from 16 to 23 in the amateurs, about 30 amateur fights. Changed a couple different coaches, but boxing, as I tell people now, was one of the most instrumental pieces of what ended up being my professional career, because between 16 and 23, especially coming out of the foster care system without parents, boxing kept me very grounded. Not that I was into drinking and drugs and all those things, even though they present themselves. In boxing, if you're weighing in and fighting once a month, you've got to keep your weight low. You've got to run 5 miles a day, a lot of sparring, a lot of bag work. So if you're participating in boxing, you're dedicated at the highest level. You're not doing things that typically slow you down. And it just became a big passion of mine.
Is boxing still important to you?
Very. So the position that I've worked myself into, there's things that have happened along the way that I'll never forget, right? I had these dealership mentors that threw their arm around me when I was just a kid starting a company without 2 sticks to rub together. Boxing took me in, and part of the letters that went to judges actually had a boxing trainer that said, hey, this kid came into my gym. I think he can be something. Let me work with him. So when I actually got out, per my probation, I was allowed to go home, school, work, and the boxing gym. And boxing has been something that I've seen a lot of troubled youth come into. No real hope, no real plan, but they're scrappy kids. If you're willing to get in there and punch
And
somebody and then take punches. It's not for everybody. So it was something that I was always able to turn to in tough times. The boxing gym never turned me away. And I've had a good time spending time in it, helping coach and train and mentor people that are coming up in the sport. I don't find it to be the most lucrative way to make a living, but still very passionate about boxing.
So if I get in the ring with Butch, who wins? Is it big because I could take
whoever
the
is
punch,
watching the video would win because
or is it that he's skinny and can move fast enough and I can't keep up?
So it only takes about 32 pounds of pressure to pinch the nerve behind your jaw. So just about anybody that weighs over 100 pounds could create that kind of punch. In boxing, size can play into it, but it is not something that can give you
a leverage.
Yeah.
Because I would imagine that he would win because I got to chase him.
Yeah, I mean, there's you'd bait him in a little bit.
Oh, okay,
you wouldn't
all right.
go chasing him.
Okay.
He'd be coming in, hitting you, and trying to get out. And your goal would be to hit him as he's coming in.
All right.
Or tie him up, or pin him in a corner where you could leverage your.
Butch is back to say, why are we talking about beating me up?
Yeah.
All right, so you're in this program now. You're boxing from 16 to 23. You talk to the judge. You got in trouble. He gives you probation to get out. You're delivering pizzas, working and inventorying this machine shop. Where is the decision of the next step of I'm going to go work and do my own thing?
So there was a phase that I had gotten into auto after the pizza delivery in the machine shop. I had done an internship at Superstition Toyota in Arizona. They think they've since been bought out. It's a different name now. As a lube tech. And I had always had a bug to, I had done things like I sold lollipops door to door, as a 10-year-old. The godparents that I was supposed to go with that I had told you about, they had been in business. They had owned an Italian restaurant. This is the restaurant that I started bussing tables at. Had gotten into construction and a couple other things. So I had seen some business behind the scenes, was always super curious about it. And, that you could offer a product or a service in exchange for money, and it seemed to be a scalable system. So I actually started my first business when I was 18. So I started a medical company, and it was called Primary Medical Specialist. Went and got me, through all this time of working, it was one of the things I did get right. I saved money, and I didn't know necessarily how to grow it at the time, but I knew if I had it that I could do things with it.
Yeah.
So I had saved some money, and I go open this call center, and seeing some of the things that I was around, a lot of the kids in foster care that I was around were on all kinds of medications. And there was always this part of the process of checking to make sure they weren't mixing certain medications with others. And then my foster father, adoptive father, going through his medical procedure, first thing they did when they came in the house is they turned to me. They said, "What medications is he on?" And I go and I open the cabinet and I'm like, every one of these. There was, 20, 30, just uppers, downers, blood pressure regulators, cholesterol medication. And I was watching them write all these things down and trying to figure out, reading the labels. Okay, what's this one for? Trying to understand if maybe he was having a chemical reaction before they realized he had had a heart attack. And I was thinking, man, such an inefficient process. So I had always had this entrepreneurial bug. So I go start this company when I'm 18, and it was basically to condense medical records to make it easily readable in an emergency situation, something that meant something to me from an experience that I had had. It started to pick up traction, and there was a thing that came out, or in and around that time, called Life Alert. And I remember thinking, man, they beat me to the punch. Like, my passion for work in that, like, died instantly. So 6 months, I've got 5 employees. I'm 18
You're
years
on the
old.
right track,
I
then.
have a call center. I've got this thing that's actually selling. We're making these online profiles. And it was one of the first times where I figured out if you're not passionate about something, when things get tough, it'll just fizzle out. You got to have passion, especially if you're starting a business. I'm thinking, that was just
There's so many things that happen in business that if you don't have passion, you'll quit.
Yes.
So you got to have that passion that pushes you through
Yeah.
those walls, and then the next wall, and then the next wall, and then the next wall, until there's less and less walls.
So here I am. I don't know. I was probably 18 or something at the time. I saved $50,000. I go get a lease on a building. I hire 5 people. We build this website, and we're building these medical profiles and selling the subscription-based model. And it starts getting tough. You're not generating enough revenue. Here I am. I don't know anything about cash forecasting or budgeting, and I'm just, we're just doing it, zero passion in it. And I don't want to do this. Like, I'll figure something else out. I had always fallen back on auto. I'm like, working in a shop, I'll go back into auto. So I had left auto to go do this thing, and then I came back into auto. So then I started another company that picked up more traction. So, you do these things till you find the thing that is you. And we would, when Apple products came out, how and then they still are, but how hot they were on the market, I would find iPhones and iPads at a really decent price that they were damaged, and MacBooks. And I had hired a technician. He was a computer guy. He could change screens. We figured out we could bulk buy a bunch of iPhones.
So you're refurbishing.
We were refurbishing Apple products mainly. There was probably 10% that was other products, but probably similar to Apple's market share, right?
Yeah.
And man, we couldn't keep any inventory. We'd fix a phone, we'd list it, it would be gone within an hour or 2.
Wow.
So all of a sudden I've got this thing and it's generating 20, 30 grand a month. And I'm like, this is awesome. Like, this is a real business. This thing's working. Again, not super passionate about the electronics business. So, I'm about 6 months into it. I'm like, I'm tired of doing this. Like, so I'm sitting there and doing all this research and trying to find my thing. I'm still always ending up back in auto. And I had thought, starting a business, you got to be white collar, suit and tie, offices, employees. And I just sat back one day and I was like, if I'm making this amount as an employee, and what's the owner making? So then I started dissecting. Okay, let's talk through the unit.
When you're having these thoughts, you're working where?
In a body shop at this time.
In a body shop. So now you're working at the body shop.
And they're starting to share numbers.
Your first body shop is where?
Chandler, Arizona.
Okay.
Yeah. And
you got in it why? What led you? And I know some of the rest of the story, right? And I know how passionate you are about the body shop. So I just want to know what led you there. Why did you go? What happened when you go, oh, I'm going to get into the body shop business?
So I don't want this to deter anybody from the automotive dealership space, but me starting and being in business for myself, I understood what we were selling, and it was other people's time, right? So we were selling labor. In the dealership, our door rate was like $130 an hour. And here I took a job at $15 an hour. And I remember thinking, man, this is such a lopsided deal that I've agreed to. Granted, you make a great living in the dealership world, and overhead is much higher, so you have to sustain much higher margin to be able to support that unit. So, but I had always had that bug in me. Where can I get a deal close? Every good business deal gets closer 50-50 for both parties, and you're both winning. So I ended up getting offered. I had gone one of the vocational schools the vocational school I had gone to. One of the kids there, his uncle worked in a body shop, and they offered me a job because I knew mechanics at like $20 an hour. Hey, you could be the shop mechanic, and you could detail cars. You can be like the cleanup guy, and the posted door rate at the time was like $43, $44 an hour, something like that. And I remember thinking, all right, that feels a little bit more fair. So I ended up in the body shop, and that was my start.
Okay. So you started because of math.
I always enjoyed. I always enjoyed.
I'm going to
math.
get paid more, and it's more fair.
Yeah.
Okay. Not necessarily because you had tried it and you found a passion to it. You just thought the numbers are right.
Yeah.
I'm going to give this a
Felt
chance.
like a good business deal.
Okay. All right. When did you get the passion?
Dealership world, super structured, right? It's a franchisor or franchisee model. Here's our blueprint. Follow the blueprint. It'll work. We've proved it, over 30,000 times in the country. In the body shop world, it's this fifth element of cars that is so low margin. Not a lot of even dealership guys want to deal with it. It's low margin. You're cutting cars in half. People are very upset that nobody woke up and go, hey, I hope I get T-boned today, and I end up in a body shop with my brand new car.
And if it does end up in a body shop, it's, man, why is it taking so long?
And you're taking thousands of bolts off of a car. You got to put it back together perfectly. So what I had noticed in the companies that I had worked for, really low structure. So, being a lean process fan and the training that we had done and learned over the years, you go into a body shop, and this was your traditional body shop. Owner's up in the office, losing his mind, writing tickets, doing payroll, and you got guys in the back just picking which car to work on, and it was more what you think it is looking at it externally. So being more process structured, I felt I flourished in the body shop. They had given me a shop, a section. Hey, this is yours. I was very big on visual controls. I liked painting, bright lights. Everything has a place in its place. I had a conversation with this owner. He was opening a couple different shops, and I had been traveling with him from one to one to move a car. And I said, hey, what more can I do? I've got a mechanic background. What can I do to earn more money? I was never pay me more, I'll give you more. It was always show me where the opportunity is, I'll prove myself, and then we can make a new deal.
Yeah.
So this guy was very point blank to me. He said, people don't move up in my company. I plug them in a hole, that's where they stay. And I ended up leaving his company the next week. So
wow.
I ended up finding it was more of a specialized shop. It was a Mercedes, BMW, Porsche shop, and they offered me a job for better. There was pretty much nothing in a body shop that I couldn't do. And as a technician, I was making a couple $100,000 a year and still very young, but I had been given a shop. I had, 6 or 7 people under me, and they were just letting me run the show. I had scaled my bills down so much. I was renting a bedroom for $300. I was walking to work. People were laughing at me, not knowing that I'm making $200,000 a year, and I didn't care. I mean, Jasmine,
guy without a car.
Jasmine, my fiance, will tell you when she met me, I had a 1-bedroom apartment with a shower curtain, a bed, and a few white shirts, and a very, very simple life that did not cost much. Even still to this day, I don't have personal debt.
Okay.
And I was able to save, just like I did when I started primary medical specialist. I had saved up a couple $100,000, and I said, what I had done was I said, hey, I've maxed out this shop that I'm at. There's really no more opportunity here. I need access to a bigger shop. This shop only did about $250,000 a month. It's very square foot, type of paint booth, type of workload contingent on the revenue that you can do. So I said, hey, I need opportunity because we've been status quo now for over a year, a little bit of growth each month. We're making money every month. So I hit a level of not bored, but just no longer fulfilled because we weren't growing. Yeah. And I had put in my notice to that shop to go back to the Valley and, see if I could take on a much larger facility, and I did that. But when I had done that, there was an inflection point where the people that were working for me at the shop that I was leaving said, hey, wherever you're going, we're following you. And I said, well, I'm going 2.5 hours that way, and I've made up my mind. Would love to bring you along, but that means you got to move. So half of them said, wherever you go, boss, we're going with you. And they moved with me.
And they moved?
They moved with me.
Wow.
And so we go work at another shop, and this shop did close to $500,000 a month. And then the other half, I had a few vendors in town call me and go, man, if you leave this place, it's going to fall apart. Like, you were able to rally this team together, and you guys have been doing so well. You know, you'd do well if you struck out on your own. And one of the vendors said, you know, actually, I got a couple cars. Would you want to fix them? So the other half of the employees, you know, we literally started in his garage. We took on this BMW. I have it in a little pamphlet as a story we would tell during acquisition integration. We took a BMW, basically 2 quarter panels had to put on it. It was a 7 Series, so it was quite an extensive repair.
Yeah.
And we fixed it in a garage, and that guy ended up driving it for some years. He told a guy who told a guy who told a guy and who told a girl, and, you know, it just...
Who gave you the references?
So before I knew it, I had this kind of thing on the side, and there were just more clients than I knew what to do with, and I'm over here working. I get a guy that calls me to paint some school buses. Says, hey, you know, we've got school buses. They're yellow. We want to paint them brown. Thinking in my head, like, who paints? I didn't know anything about it. And this was gentlemen who were in the agricultural business. Yeah. Sure, we'll do it. Whatever. We paint 5 buses, and we actually mess them up.
Oh, my God.
So we mess them up. We get the sides right, but, you know, think of the school buses. The tops are white, and the sides are yellow. We were super focused on covering the yellow on the sides that we really didn't make the top very nice. Everything that you could see looked nice, but it was like I didn't know what it was actually getting into. So we deliver these buses back, and a few days later I get a call, and this guy's reaming me. I mean, who the F do you think you are? Blah, blah, blah. I'll pay whatever. I want my buses nice. So I'm like, you know, very calm. Hey, super sorry. I'll be out there to take care. And I heard you're still working a job. And he tells me, don't be a little blank. I'll let you fill in. Go all in. I had to at one point. And I remember sitting there thinking, I have this business. It's generating money. I'm so nervous about jumping off this $200,000 ledge I have. You know, picture this. You're, at the time, 23. You've got a side business making some money. You're making a couple $100,000 a year. No personal bills, super low living expenses. I mean, I was on a clear path to a very short, early retirement, right? And I remember thinking, you know, I think this is my sign that I do have to go all in. And I ended up driving out there to meet him the next day and left my job.
And so this is your first body shop business?
So we had to morph from a garage, obviously, to a facility that I rented that we could paint some buses in.
Yeah, the tops, the roofs.
Yeah.
Do you know that guy, Mark Rodriguez? Have you heard of him?
I don't.
Produce something? Yeah, he's big in Yuma.
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll probably cut that out, but
yeah.
Okay, so now you're in this body shop business, and you're how old? When you own your own place and you're in?
Yeah, so I first, through the corporate commission, I registered the business at the end of 2012. So 2012, for, I would say, the first 6 months, I was being a entrepreneur. I kind of had this thing. We kind of had a little revenue, but I'm making what I thought at the time was pretty decent money for an employee.
Yeah.
You know, young, don't have bills, and I'm making a couple $100,000. So I worked with my head down for 4 years, learning everything I could about the business side. Learning about banking, learning about credit lines, learning about leverage, learning about payroll.
So you go from 23 years old in one location to 48 locations by the time you're how old?
So we were over 40 locations and over 9 figures since I've been 31.
So in 8 years, you build a 9-figure company with 48 locations that in March you sold.
Yep.
Are you going crazy or are you happy?
I'm excited because I've now sold the company twice. So first time was for an 8-figure number. Second time was for a 9-figure number. I have a tool belt now that I feel the universe has broadened to me now. You know, I know service, I know inventory, I know parts and labor. And I knew we were going to sell the company when I signed the LOI around October. So I went through the losing your mind phase, I would say, between October and December.
Yeah.
But I still had a big mission ahead of me that I had.
There's a losing your mind and there's a losing your baby.
Yeah.
Right? That you created.
Yeah, and the company that I sold to wasn't understanding when I was saying, hey,
they didn't understand the baby.
This was my baby.
They didn't understand the baby.
This is an emotional journey for me.
That's typically the way it happens, right?
Yeah.
Because it's your dream, it's your passion, it's your hard work, it's your baby. You build it. Somebody comes in and says, great, I didn't want to go through all that. Now that you build it, here's your money and let me handle it. And that's where sometimes it doesn't work out right? Because...
Well, one thing that I figured out, and even when I was employed, I was let to do my own thing. I'm not a good employee. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a startup guy. I'm a founder. And I love being king of my castle. You know, I've built... We did amazing work over at the company. We had our really rough years. We had our great years. We had our years of integration and upgrading the IT stack and, you know, learning middle management.
Yeah.
You know, we've raised, you know, over $200 million for the company. So a lot of bank process in there. You know, the amount of things that I had learned over the years that morphed us out of this cool, creative idea into this real viable business. I just feel now that, one, I'm not employable. Two, the amount of opportunity that has popped up, you know, since then, knowing that I was going to sell the company and that I wasn't going to be able to work for somebody else.
What was the first thing you did when you cashed in?
Well, so I have never, I would say, been tied to heavy material things, and I first became a millionaire when I was 24, 25. I've bought a lot of things that I thought I may have wanted. You know, got my pilot's license, you know, bought the McLaren, the Bentley, you know, taking the private jets, you know, compound house, you know, family's got everything they want. My passion has never really been in material things. I love building and growing. So I'd rather spend $1 million on a business than on a car. We've done a lot of things that I think most people would like to do in this lifetime, and right now I'm just laser focused. My goal is $1 billion. So that's
this is a stepping.
Yeah, you know, and getting to a couple $100 million at 31 and then running that for, you know, 3 to 4 years. It's now primed me with the tools to be able to go achieve the ultimate goal of, you know, and I've always kept moving that goal.
And so your new project is automotive repair shops.
Yeah, so I've made several investments, and I want to operate them as, you know, my own family private equity office, putting in the operating systems. A lot of the tools that I didn't get that I had to learn from the School of Hard Knocks of just messing it up. It's what a lot of this entrepreneurship is, right? You mess something up, you build a procedure that shows how not to hit that wall again.
To help you not to mess up again.
Several years, it just buckled down. You know, I had a great VP in the company that, you know, he was really able to help take the vision and help materialize it. And, you know, years we just spent documenting procedure. And a lot of these operating models and procedures and technology that you need to implement, it applies to a lot of different businesses. It's not just, you know, singular. So that, you know, I hunkered down for a lot of years. We just focused on process and procedure, and going from a garage to one of the largest companies in the country in our space. Several times I didn't have two sticks to rub together. And I had people that just backed me no matter what, always had my back.
Believed in you.
Believed in me. And the momentum that we created behind that and the loyalty behind it, it was not duplicatable. I was going to hold that no matter what.
And, you know, your customers see that, right? I mean, because people believing in you gives you this sense of, I can do this, and your customers feed off of, he can do this.
Yes.
And it's an incredible circle when somebody believes in somebody.
Yeah, some of our very first early partners loved seeing our wins over the years.
Yeah.
Couldn't believe how fast we were growing and the things we were accomplishing. So it was a very good time.
So just so people that, are listening to this, I want to kind of recap it as we end. You are a 35-year-old man who sold a body shop company for 9 figures plus.
Correct.
But sold it at 35.
Yeah.
Over 9 digits. And you came from the most humble place, which was at 6 months old, you're taken away from your mother, and you get thrown in the foster care program. You get adopted at 3 into a foster home type business.
Yep.
With revolving beds.
Yep.
You run away when you're 12 or 13. Yep. You get jobs to survive and pay your own way.
Yep.
You end up in boxing, do a couple of wrong things, get in juvenile detention, go in front of a judge. The judge gives you mercy because you played it well by owning up to it and not playing the pity card.
Yep.
Then you open these other businesses like the medical thing and the whole thing, end up in a body shop because you saw that they paid more and the share was fairer.
Yes.
And that led you in a couple of years to open another and another and another and another. Well, from there you opened your own and then it led you to another and another. What a story.
Yeah, it's been...
I mean, when people tell you the book, and the book obviously will have more details in the podcast, but you need to write down every detail of your life because it is an amazing story. Again, I'm going to recommend start with the success first.
Yeah.
Because people got to realize this is where I'm at, but let me explain to you where I started. Okay? And I know that lately I don't know if the right word is, found faith or you're going to church or whatever the case may be. I mean, I just know from what you've told me, but I do believe that God created everybody with a purpose. You were created with a purpose. You maybe didn't know that purpose
right.
as you're going along, but you were created with a purpose. Somewhere down the line, you took ownership and said, I'm going to do something with my life. And God sends in people to guide you along the way to be a 35-year-old man with an incredible story and an incredible successful business that you just sold. And this is just the beginning to all the things that you're yet to do, including being part of Petrocare's advisory board and hopefully growing in with that. So before we leave, 2 things. And I'll tell you both questions now, and you can answer them however you want.
Sure.
Somebody looking at this today that is in the foster care program or has been in trouble or made some wrong decisions or did some wrong things, what is one important piece of advice that you can give them? And then my other question is, why Petrocares?
Somebody's had your struggle before, and there's a high probability that they've written a book on it or documented it somewhere. So one of the biggest things I'll credit to all the things that I've learned over the years, I went and found mentors that were far beyond where I was, but where I knew I wanted to get to. And I ended up passing 3 of them along the way. It maybe not in terms of life experiences, but in terms of revenue, because I had always tied goals to revenue. There's a book that details some struggle you're going through or something you'd like to accomplish. You know, I was with a young group of kids the other day. A successful business owner put me in front of his 3 sons. He said, I just want my kids to hear from you, okay? I want them to do well, but I just want to put them in front of you. The kid asks me, he says, how can I go buy an apartment building with no money? It was part of my background. I ended up buying a couple apartment buildings. It was a small piece of my story. If I don't have a ton of money and this and that, and I said, first life lesson, that's the right question to ask. It's a good quality question. You need to stay curious. You need to ask a lot of good questions. 2, there's several books written on it. And I'm not going to give you the answer. I'm going to challenge you. Here's a couple books that I know of. Go read them. I'll see you in 2 weeks. Let me know what you think of the books. So, and I have a feeling you're going to be watching. So I am going to check with you on your book. Anything you're going to run into is documented. I firmly believe, because everything I ran into that I was either trying to accomplish or I was struggling with in business. And I buckled down and I read. Super, super curious. I love personal development books. I love business biographies. Stay super curious. CEOs, high-powered government officials, people running either large sums of revenue or large organizations read between 50 and 60 books a year. I've still maintained that. Books are coming out fast enough. Some of them are the same things plagiarized over with their own little twist, but if you could just pick up one thing from every book and add it to your tool belt, it's still meaningful. So, I'm 25 books or so in this year, and I finished one on the plane over here, by the way. Books. Stay curious, ask good quality questions, and if you're struggling about something, research to see if it's been written about. If you don't have somebody like a mentor that you can turn to that's been there, find a book that has been written about and just read it. Read it a couple times and see if you can pick up the answers from it. You can control what you read and what you do with your time.
That's good. I mean, it's almost, I don't know if it's almost or is education.
Yeah.
In your own way. So that's really good.
Yeah.
So why PetroCares? Why is being involved in PetroCares a passion for you?
It pierced me in the chest, man. It's such a right time. The gentleman who sent it to me, we were connected through my best friend who passed away. And opening up the page and reading the statistics, just going, man, I was every one of those. And if my story could change the life of just one kid and they can go do some good, whether it's earn a job or maybe they start a company that employs several thousand people, generating hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue and just being viably connected to the economy and for good, paying a lot of tax, employing a lot of people. That's what my passion is right now, and that's why I was attracted to PetroCares. So super grateful to be invited to the board with you guys to help PetroCares placing technicians into such a need. You go to any automotive convention, any business, they tell you, we've got to solve for this technician, shortage.
Yeah.
And this is a perfect solution for that. So I know it can be applied to general automotive repair, the collision business, the auto glass business, the dealership world. I know it can fuel that economy. And the auto repair business on the service side, it's hard work, so kind of being rough around the edges, our flaws as foster kids, we fit perfectly into that mold.
Well, brother, we again, you know that I'm a believer, and I believe that God orchestrates things for such a time as this. And you being in our lives now is for a reason. And I'm excited because, like I said to everybody that I've talked to since I met you, nobody on the board, advisory or other board, can go to those kids and say, I was you. I was this statistic. I was this statistic. I mean, you literally were every statistics but death, thank God.
Yes.
Right?
And came close.
and came close, But thank God you did it. You can look at these kids and tell them you faced something that none of us faced and made it thanks to God. So we're excited to have you on the advisory board. We agree with you. This is a national program. This is just beginnings. It'll be big. And anyway, Jacob, we appreciate you being part of the family. Thank you for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to Wheels, Deals, and Meals. your main source for all things good and fun, business, food, and cars. If you like this episode, make sure to rate us and subscribe. If you would like to be a guest on our show, please leave a message at the link below. Till next time, happy eating!